Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle, and today I want to talk to you about slowing down and kind of how I've come to the place of slowing things down. So first I want to talk about why I think it's important. I think especially on social media, YouTube, things like that, we're often given these videos or images of get it all done, be really productive, block scheduling. If you figure out just how to fit every single thing in your day in a little time, then everything will get done. And I think there is some helpful things to being organized, time management, things like that. But I think it also perpetuates the idea that we have to get it all done, that there's always a to-do list and we always have to be productive in checking things off. And I think especially with, if you're a homeschooler, the beginning of another homeschool year coming up, you see all these videos about schedules and getting everything where it should be, and it can be very overwhelming, making us think that we need to be doing more or we're not doing enough. So I want to put this video out, especially right now, because I think it's important with the messages we're getting online and through social media. But there are some things recently that definitely led me towards being in a more slowing down mindset. One of those is my family recently had COVID. I will link up above my experience with it as well as my family's experience with it. To briefly summarize that, it was difficult. My husband got sick. It was very difficult for him physically. Me as the caregiver to my entire family, I was well for most of it, but it was extremely difficult juggling all those things of being mom, teaching, and also dealing with your family being sick at the same time. And towards the end of everybody else getting better, I physically got sick from COVID, and it was rough for me just because my body was so exhausted. And it's interesting because right after getting COVID, we had planned a camping trip, and it just happened to fall right after quarantine ended for COVID. And like I said, everyone else in my family was well by then, and I was past my 10 days of COVID and everything like that, but I still had a lingering cough, as well as my husband and son still had a lingering cough from COVID while we were camping. And I will link up above our camper that we bought if you're curious to see what that is like, but you can tell in that video while I'm speaking, my voice definitely sounds raspier than normal, at least I can tell. But it was interesting because with COVID, there's very few times in my life I've been physically restricted where I couldn't do everything I wanted to. There are times when each of my pregnancies with all three of my children, I got really physically ill, at least for the first 18 to 20 weeks. And there was very little I could do. It was very base. My husband would often have to come home early from work and make dinner and then go back to work because I physically couldn't do it. And it was very difficult for me during those times to be limited because I am a natural perfectionist and overachiever. So I'm one of those that let's do it all, get it all done, take it all on myself, which again is good in some aspects, but has some negativity as well. And when I got COVID, it was definitely one of those instances where I was physically not able to do everything I wanted to or everything I thought I should be doing. And it was difficult on top of that because my husband was still recovering from COVID and still restricted in what he could do. So it was forcing me to let some things go and to realize that it's okay if this doesn't get done or if that doesn't get done. Doesn't have to be perfect, right? Progress over perfection. So while we were camping, where we camped, there was pretty much no cell reception. Now there was like a ranger down the road, so if there was anything that ever happened, we had access to a phone. But my phone didn't work, and we camped for, I think, 5 days. And it was really, really nice reminder. Because again, I was recovering from COVID, so when my husband would take the kids off for a hike or whatever, I would sit in the camper or sit outside and read a book because I just physically couldn't hike yet. Prolonged activity or talking a lot would make me have coughing fits, so I had to relax and actually rest my body. I didn't have a choice, or I would get ill or cough a lot. So I was kind of in this position where there was no social media, there was no YouTube, there was no phone calls, there was no text messages. I didn't look at my phone for 4 days, and it was really nice. It was a nice reminder that none of those things are really important. Now, I really do enjoy my channel and connecting with people and like that, but it's not a priority in my life. There are things that are much more important. So taking that week to physically rest was really important, to get into nature, which is something I honestly don't do a lot. I'm not a big nature person. I don't like bugs or heat, and I've never been an outdoors person. So being forced again into nature to rest my body, to slow down, like there was nothing to do. Sure, I had to occasionally do camping dishes and things like that, but there was nothing on the to-do list. There was no errands to run. There's nothing to get done. I could just sit and think, which as a mother, if you know, is not something you're always privileged to do. So while we were camping, I brought this book along with me. It's called Sabbath, Finding Rest, Renewal, and Delight in Our Busy Lives by Wayne Miller. Funny story about this. While I was reading it in the camper, my husband looked at it and he was looking for the book and he's like, I know the author. I'm like, what do you mean you know the author? He's like, I know the author. Apparently he was a professor when my husband was in seminary. If you're new here, my husband's a pastor. So when he was getting his master's degree, that was one of the professors. So he actually met him, which I thought was interesting. He'd never read the book though before. So I think this book is extremely helpful, and it's one of the reasons I'm sharing, because again, I was kind of leaning towards this slowing down path. Physically, I was kind of being forced to. I was in nature. I was resting my body, and this just happened to fall at the right time. I happened to be reading the right thing at the right time. So this book is, again, as you can see by the title, talking about Sabbath. And it doesn't just talk about the Jewish idea of Sabbath or the Christian idea of Sabbath. It talks about Sabbath throughout Christianity, Judaism, yes, but also Buddhism, and I believe there's some Islamic principles also discussed in here. And I really do enjoy religious books that talk about different perspectives. I don't necessarily like to pick up a religious book that has just one, say, a Christian perspective in it, because I feel like it's kind of agenda-y. But this, I like that it pulled from how different religious backgrounds would celebrate the Sabbath and why it's important to them. So one of the main themes in here is obviously rest and rhythm, talking about the importance of rest, and I like how the author talks about specific people in his life that they use these different principles. I'll give you a quick look at the table of contents if you're curious. But there's a big part, obviously, about rest and rhythm, and I often hear, especially in the homeschooling community, finding your rhythm in homeschool and things like that. But I think this is different, talking about how reconnecting, especially to nature. Nature is a big thing in healing our bodies and resting our bodies and getting back into nature, and how it kind of resets us. And the timing was perfect for this, because again, I was resting in nature, and because I'm not a big nature person, it made me realize how important it is to get out into nature, to reset those rhythms and reset yourself, really. He also talks about the importance of rest. He does bring up different religious ideas about rest and the importance of rest, about how Jesus didn't rest when everything was done, when everybody was healed. He would often walk away into the woods or off on his own when he needed to rest, not when everything was done. I think that's a big important thing, especially for parents, caregivers, mothers. We often put ourselves last. We often feel like, okay, if we get this next thing done, then it'll be a rest. I can take a break. But we don't often do. We often just keep pushing and pushing, and I'm a person that just keeps pushing through it. And I'm getting to a time in my life, I'm 35, about to be 36, where I'm realizing I can't push my body like I used to. Having COVID and getting sick from that, and having the restrictions on my body that I did, I'm realizing I can't push like I used to. I can't push myself and my body like I used to. I have to slow down. I have to rest. I need to physically rest myself. And one of the things he talks about, of course, is the idea of the Jewish Sabbath, about how you don't do certain things, electronics, you turn all these things off, you don't run errands, you pretty much just sit with your family. And he talks about how it's not so much about all the things you can't do, but those restrictions are kind of releasing you from these obligations you believe you have. That you don't have to answer those emails right away. You don't have to answer the phone calls or the text messages. Technology is a wonderful thing, but it also makes us feel like we always have to answer people right away, that we always have to be on. And that's just not the truth. And those restrictions help free us of those beliefs that we have to do those things. We have to catch up. I'm definitely one of those people that if I get my to-do list, I think, okay, well, what can I do that's on tomorrow's list to get ahead? I never get ahead. There will always be more things to do. That's the catch, right? He also talks about, one of the things he talks about is Jesus and his Sermon on the Mount. Obviously, that's an important one, about how he talks about how we are blessed now, not blessed when this happens or that happens, when you're no longer struggling. You're blessed now. And I think the big theme of the Sabbath is to remember the things in your life, your family, spending time with them, to take time away from everything else, let everything else kind of fall away, and remember what's important, to recenter yourself and your focus. And remember, you are blessed in many different situations in your life, and that there is great joy in that. And one of the Jewish beliefs is to bless your children. And I think that's really an interesting idea, to remember your children and to pray for them, because our children can definitely be a big source of stress and frustration at times, but to remember the joy that they also bring into our lives. So there's a quote I highlighted in here that I think kind of sums up the book, that our core human values, the deepest and best of who we are, require the nourishment of time and care if we are to grow and flourish. So I think that pretty much sums up the entire book, that in order to grow and nourish ourselves, we must take time to rest. So I wanted to share some of the things I've been doing specifically to rest. Now, real quick, one of the things I like in the book is he gives examples of how to have a Sabbath. And if you want a morning Sabbath, an afternoon Sabbath, an entire day Sabbath, there's many examples in here and different things you can try to create your own Sabbath. So some of the things I have incorporated in my life to help with this is I have created a Sabbath, and I do it on Sunday because that's just how it works in my life. But I don't use my phone, I don't use my computer, I don't do any work, I don't do any homeschooling prep, I don't do any house cleaning. I literally do nothing. That is my day to do nothing. And it's extremely hard, I have to admit. It is really hard not to do nothing, because again, I'm that person that always wants to go, go, go. To sit, and he talks about this in the book, how it's very uncomfortable for some people to just sit, because you have to kind of think, and you kind of think about, who you are, those deeper level thoughts, and a lot of people stay busy to keep away from confronting that, because we're all kind of scared we're going to sit there and realize there's nothing important, or we're not important, or those deeper level spiritual questions and things like that, meditation, things like that, that we're afraid of the silence or the quiet or the stillness. And I think that's interesting, to go from being super busy, but it's important to have that time, even if it's just a couple hours or a day, to have that reset, to go into another week being able to be rested instead of using your weekend to be super busy and get everything else done. So I have created a Sabbath Sunday where I don't do all these things. I embrace those restrictions of Sabbath to free myself of the obligations that I think I have. Something else I've done is, especially during the week, things can get busy and I get frustrated and things happen. So I have some physical reminders I wear to help me remember that to slow down, that this, whatever I'm freaking out about or stressed out about, will pass, right? There's seasons in life where things are busy, but it won't always be like that. So one of the things I do is I wear this necklace, and you can see it's different phases of the moon. And I like this because it reminds me that things change. It's a season, right? Like, I have young kids now, I'm running around a lot, but it won't always be like that. There will be a time when things are slower. So I like this because it reminds me that there's phases in life, that things change. Another thing I wear is this bracelet, and it's supposed to represent the planets. So obviously the sun, and then you have Mercury, Venus, Earth, Saturn. I was kind of sad there's no Pluto on here. I am a firm believer that Pluto is still a planet. But I like that, to wear this to remind me that no matter what I'm going through or stressed about, that in the grand scheme of things, is it that important? And this isn't to devalue what you find important or what you're going through that's difficult, but to remind yourself that what is important now, what is stressing you now, will it be stressful in a year, 5 years, 10 years, when you're older? And is it something that you should really be worrying about, or should you just let it go? And I always remember hearing the saying, just give it to Jesus. And I always assumed people thought, okay, give it to Jesus because they believed Jesus was the one in control, or God wasn't the one in control, that no matter what you do, God has a plan for you. I never really liked that interpretation of it. But in the book, he talks about how it's more realizing that things happen, sometimes bad things, sometimes good things happen, and you ultimately don't have a lot of control with it. But knowing that, and of course this is a Christian belief, that Jesus is with you through those things, those difficult things, that you're not alone, that he's not necessarily the one causing them, or God's not, a puppet up there determining who lives and who dies or who goes through horrible experience. It's not to teach you a lesson, but just that things happen sometimes, but that you're not alone when those things are happening. And I think that is extremely important to know. So I wear this to remind me that whatever thing is going on that's causing me stress or frustration, that in the world, and we're just a little speck, and to remember that we're not alone though. Another thing I've been doing is I use an app on my phone, and I know this is like, wow, you're talking about not using your phone, but you have an app. I am a person that needs like guided meditation. I'm not one that can sit silently without having some help. So I use this app called Smiling Mind, and I'll put a little picture here, but it's kind of just, it has different mindfulness activities, kind of meditation, guided meditation, things like that. I use the guided mindfulness part. It takes you kind of on a journey. It reminds you how to breathe and to focus on your breath, but it also does things like mindful eating, which is something I'm trying to incorporate more. So often as a busy mom, I will just eat on the go, or I'll eat looking at my phone or at a lesson plan or something. I'm not really focusing on that I'm actually eating. I'm not really enjoying my food. And I remember reading a while back that unless you're actually focused on what you're doing when you're eating, your brain doesn't actually realize you're eating. That's how we can often feel like we're hungry after we're eating, because our brain's not actually getting the signal because it's focusing on whatever else we're doing. So I'm purposely making it an effort, especially, I think the biggest one is I would often use my phone when I was eating lunch, obviously not dinner, we don't have phones or anything at the table for that, but during breakfast I'd be checking my email. During dinner or during lunch I'd be checking YouTube comments and things like that. No, it's not necessary. So I purposely don't use my phone or any type of electronic when I'm eating food, whether it be a snack or a meal, but to really enjoy what I'm consuming. And especially after having COVID and losing my taste for a good month, to really enjoy the taste of the food again. So mindful eating is another thing I'm doing, as well as the app that I've been using for breathing exercises. And I try to do it, and again, it's anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes a day, depending on what little thing you choose in the app to do. And I try to do it daily. I do. But does it always happen? No. But I do feel better when I do those activities. And the last thing is, I just come to the conclusion that I can't do everything, that I can't be everything for everyone all the time. And I think especially with juggling so many roles as a mom, as a homeschooler, as a wife, I also am in charge of the Christian Ed at our church. There's a lot of balls that I juggle in the air, a lot of responsibilities. And realizing I can't do them all, I can't do everything perfectly. So reminding myself that it's okay to say no, it's okay to slow down, take time for myself, prioritizing myself is important. So some of the things I've done recently is there was an art class offered at our library for free. Well, I mean, you pay for the supplies, but the instruction is free. I signed up for it. My husband has no problem keeping an eye on the kids during that time, so I can do that. Often my husband works very long hours, or he has meetings later in the day, because again, he's a pastor, and he's often, if he gets a phone call, someone's in the hospital, he goes. So it's very difficult to find time for myself when somebody's schedule is so demanding, and much like it says in the book about how Jesus has these responsibilities, and it's hard to, especially when you have a job like my husband, where it can feel like life or death if people you're not responding to them right away. But putting myself as important in that as well, knowing that I need time, because often I would think, well, he's had a hard day, or this has happened at work, and I can do the dinner dishes even though I cook the meal. No, I don't have to. And this isn't to say my husband doesn't help. He does help. He really does try, but sometimes he's just really tired too. But realizing that I don't have to do it, that I can go sit and rest for a little bit after doing this. Also communicating to my husband that I need those rests, because he, again, sees me as this, I'm always the go get it kind of person. I never ask for help. Making sure I'm asking people in my life for help. If I need to go out and have dinner with my friend and just hang out, we can do that. To realize it's okay to allow yourself to be first, to find hobbies, activities, things that nourish you as a person, not as a mom, not as a homeschooler, not as a wife, but things that nourish who you are without all those other labels that you are. You are all those things, and they're wonderful things to be about you, but there's more to you than that, and nourishing those things that help you grow as a person. So I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, leave them down below. If not, thank you for watching.